All right, I'm going to start us off here with a little introduction. I'm really excited to be talking to this guest affiliate owner today to kind of cover an important topic. I'll just kind of summarize it as inclusivity, but I'm going to introduce Shiloh Allison, owner of the Recovery Gym, which is a gym in Portland, Oregon. And inside of the Recovery Gym is the affiliate CrossFit One Day at a Time. And recently, also, you guys have opened up a second location, just one county over, which is another recovery gym, the recovery gym. And inside that is also an affiliate CrossFit One rep at a time. So I'm excited if we keep growing in this trend, what the next recovery gym affiliate name, one squat at a time or one round at a time.
Yes. Oh, one round at a time.
Yep,
I think you nailed
exactly.
it.
But yeah, so I just really excited to hear about a lot of different things you're going to talk to us about in terms of inclusivity within the affiliate and how you've learned to really open things up so that everyone can feel welcome, no matter what they're coming in, what communities they're sort of identifying with, they're coming in from. I want to hear a little bit about the Recovery Gym and what you guys do and what the goal is of that program.
Sure. I really appreciate your time today. I know we had to reschedule a couple of times, so I appreciate your flexibility. But the Recovery Gym is a recovery-centric fitness facility. All of our programming is CrossFit centric. That was something for me personally that I just as soon as I started flirting with the idea of recovery, CrossFit was one of those things that I got into that I was this has to be a thing for people in recovery. And I mean, it just there was just something about it, it's not like a gym when you go in and you put your earbuds in. I think everybody's heard this and talks about it, that you know everybody. And I think a lot of people, when they're entering into recovery, they are looking for those support systems, and so, and also, you also have to sometimes abandon certain relationships that aren't good for your recovery. And so you're learning, how to establish bonds with people in a healthy capacity. And I think that that's something that, CrossFit provides and is super unique to CrossFit. And so it personally for me and my own experience, that became really paramount. And then, in starting the Recovery Gym, the things that we learned as we went about how it can actually enhance people's recovery. And from a mental health aspect, I think most people can understand, especially now after the pandemic, of how challenging that was to not have that outlet and that community that we all relied on. But also on a molecular level, for people who are using what is called medication-assisted recovery, it can really help people when they start to taper off of those medications. Those medications are meant to help people transition off of a dependency. But what they are is an opioid blocker. So the ones that our bodies naturally produce, it will block those. But as you start to taper off of those, it can kind of help your body achieve that, so that it the coming off of those medications. And this is, I want to stress that this is not this is anecdotal. This is the feedback that I've gotten from our participants. This isn't peer reviewed or anything, but I have a hunch that, if we could back it up with some peer reviewed research, that they would find, that this, those highs that you get from a runner's high or those high intensity workouts, that's going to really help those individuals.
That's really cool. And now I'm actually wanting to find someone that's willing to study that. I wonder if someone at University of Portland or something would want to take that on. That's so cool.
I know. Yeah.
I don't know if I saw you guys are in Portland, Oregon. But that's I mean, like I said, even anecdotally, that's huge, because you're not hearing it as a one-off case. There's a reason that there are people that are coming back again and again. And I don't think this would be too off base to say that recovery can be a lonely time for some people. And so to have a place to go, and a lot of people use different communities to have a place, right? There's lots of different programs for recovery because everyone knows that it can be very lonely and isolating, and that can cause a relapse for many people. So being able to have your group, and there's that accountability that we talk about with our members in any affiliate. How much is that necessary for people that are going through this journey? I can only imagine that consistently knowing that my coach is there and they're looking out for me in the parking lot, they're waiting to see me walk in, and that, you know, that friend in class. And I think that's amazing. And we've seen this blend with different programs across the country and internationally. So I'm really excited that you guys have this happening out in the West Coast as well. It's pretty cool. In terms of go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible, like the lives that, you know, we get to touch on a daily basis. And yeah, to speak to like that accountability piece, you know, too, it's yeah, like it's like an accountability that they want to participate in. You know, it's not like necessarily like a fear of letting anyone down, but it's just like, you know, I think anybody can attest to like when they've taken a week off or whatever and they come back and they're just like, oh, like they feel it, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, it's kind of, you know, like similar to that, where it's just like, oh man, like I actually want to be in there, you know, like it's hard and we do hard work in here, and, you know, like we're counting all of our reps, and like my coach is holding me accountable to, you know, like the depth of my squat. But, you know, it's, you know, it's just, it also just kind of like teaches like that grunt work, that hard work, you know. So yeah, there's
Absolutely.
just so many you know, so many ways that this, you know, we know that this benefits anyone, but yeah, the way that it has benefited like our population specifically is like really profound.
And I love this idea of replacing old habits with new habits. And even if some of those old habits were just, they don't even have to always be in relation to using, but even just what would lead to that, being around certain crowds or in certain areas that are just going to lead back down that route. So what are the habits that you normally had waking up and having your day? And now what are they instead? And sort of shifting those habits. And oftentimes I'm sure food comes into play, and sleep and you know, physical recovery in that regard. These are new habits that are for some the first time being formed, and you guys are the ones teaching that. And I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
Well,
and I think like I can speak to like my experience with CrossFit, and just, you know, like what kept me doing it was just kind of like continually being able to surprise myself at like what I could do, but also being able to kind of like apply that mindset outside of the gym. You know, like when you start to get to a point where like you're of, you know, working out, where you're strategizing on how you're going to attack a workout, like that of course is going to translate into like your everyday life, because now you have this mechanism for strategizing on how you're going to handle your day. You know, you break, like if you're breaking down your reps, you know, like that can translate into how you break down tasks in your day.
nice. Yes, exactly. Small wins, right? There's so much I think we've all learned about, right? You look at the monster of a workout or set of reps, or even just a singular exercise that is daunting. And we would be lying if we said the words don't pop into our head. I can't. Or what if I can't? Right. And
Yeah.
I can't speak from personal experience, but from the people that I've known, like that can be the daily feeling for someone that's in recovery. And just, I can't, or what if I can't, right? And that there's a fear associated there. I can speak from the athlete perspective of doing CrossFit, that there's a fear sometimes of the workout. I feel fear looking at the workout. And then also that fear of what if I can't, right? So knowing that and having this parallel journey with CrossFit where there's similar feelings, but then there's that a feeling of achievement every time you've done the movement, one rep of it, one rep at a time, right? One day at a time. Like every time that builds that confidence, that fear starts to dissipate. And well, my hope would be the same thing is happening for the person that's in recovery. So pretty cool thing. I'm kind of curious from your perspective, when you started CrossFit, were you at an affiliate? Were you just sort of trying to get online on your own, or you started before the recovery gym came to be, correct?
I did, yes. My dog is doing a thing.
Oh.
I don't know if you can hear.
No.
Yeah, I started CrossFit in an affiliate. And you know, I was like still bartending at the time, but also like trying to be sober and whatever. But I just really, you know, like it just made sense to me. You know, I was like, oh, like this is where the happy hour is. Like essentially, like this is like the other bar, right? But you know, and it wasn't like, I don't know, it wasn't like a month into it when I was like, I'm gonna do this. Like I'm gonna, like, not necessarily the recovery gym, but I was like, I'm gonna like get into coaching. And I ended up getting my personal training cert first, and then like 8 months later, not even a year later, I got my level 1. And Chris McDonald, you know, owned X Factor at that time. So I, you know, attended there and just really liked his style and, you know, like resonated with him. So I left the affiliate that I was at and just joined there as a member, and just in talking to him about like what I wanted to do, you know, doing what Chris does, he's like, all right, like I will show you the way. And yeah, so between X Factor and the Alano Club, which is our parent organization of the recovery gym, we are a program of the Alano Club. So they're actually like the nonprofit that funds everything that we do. But we like made an alliance. It was like a super modest program of like, you know, one class 3 days a week, and it blew up after about like a month. And so we added more classes, and then, you know, about like 4 or 5 months later, we're like, you know what, like this needs to be its own thing. And then from there, it took about 3 years to actually get us into like 3.5 years to get us into like our own location. But yeah, that's that's what happened.
Now you blossomed into a second location, and I can't wait to hear about what your guys' plans are long term. But within the affiliate that you guys have, we can just talk about one of them. How many classes do you run a day on average?
So in Portland, we run 7 classes a day.
Okay, awesome. And it's very similar to a lot of affiliates. And then you were talking to me about trainers, the trainers you hire. Where do you find your trainers?
We have actually hired a lot of people that have like participated in the program. I would say like 90%, 85, 90% of the people who we have hired have come from within the program. So they've, you know, like they got like their level 1 with us. They've gone through like an internship and like trainer development and stuff like that. So and, you know, have either been offered like full-time positions or, you know, just coach with us like part-time. But yeah, we have historically like brought most of our trainers in from like actual participants of our program, which is really cool to see. Because I'm like, I remember your first reps.
Yeah. But that person is going to be able to relate so much to everyone that walks through the door, because at some point they were in that similar spot where they're at in their journey, whether with recovery or it. Like I remember when I couldn't do that movement as well, or I remember when I was feeling how you're feeling. And not to say I know how you feel, that can be hard for some people, but more so like there is a light at the end of the tunnel and you will get through it and things will get better. And that's pretty cool. We've talked a little bit before when we were figuring out that we wanted to get on this call and have this up on the channel for people, that a big part of what you do at your gym is making people feel welcome, making some people that maybe feel like they don't belong in another gym or in another space feel like they do belong here. And that extends beyond just people that are in recovery. That reaches a broad range of communities. And I want to believe, I want to look on the positive side that a lot of affiliates pride themselves in that as well, that they want to be the place that says, yes, this is your spot. You're welcome here. I think maybe by no intention or fault, it just sort of has happened that there are times certain communities are leaving people out of the conversation. And that could be by way of how their marketing is targeting, or maybe just by, this is the people that are in the gym, so this is the people that make it up on the website or make it up on the social media. And therefore, when from the outside looking in, it doesn't look like everyone has a seat at the table. And so again, not to throw stones or anything or call someone out that they're doing it wrong, doing it bad. Again, I look at it from the perspective as I want to believe that these aren't intentional. It's more of like, this is just the way it is right now. And a lot of affiliate owners have a lot of balls they're keeping in the air, and that might be one of them that dropped, right? And so
Right.
we want to talk about is how do we create spaces that all communities are welcome, that everyone can feel that they have a spot and that they can walk into any affiliate. If we're looking at race, religion, sexual orientation, anything, what does someone feel like when they walk in your space? Do they feel like they belong? From the members and how they interact, to the coaches, to the owners. And what are some things, maybe you kind of mentioned it was like just some considerations that owners can think about, and how maybe that can trickle down from owner to coach to member, if you want to sort of touch on that.
I like, from like a recovery perspective, I've definitely like had a lot of people ask like the question of like, how do I get started with this? Or like, like things like that. And, like, and I can share like from, like a couple of things that like I wish I would have known when like getting started and on like this side of things, is just starting with the becoming like trauma aware, like how, like what are the things that are going to be like activating or triggering for like this specific demographic, and you will not be disappointed that there are a lot of them. But and it doesn't mean that like you like have to walk on eggshells by any means, but it is just, being curious and like not shying away from that conversation and just asking the question, and like, we can tell, like we watch people for a living, we can tell when somebody's uncomfortable, and it's just, having like the bravery and the courage to just like inquire with that person. Like, hey, what can we do better? Like, how can I serve you better? I think is a great question to start with. But like some tools that we use with like people, especially around like trauma, is like our bodies don't really know the difference, like if our like the fight or flight is coming from working out, or if it's coming from like an actual threat, they can feel the same in the body, especially to people who have recently experienced that trauma or have recently experienced a trigger to that trauma. So going over, like if we have like assault bike or like echo bike sprints, like that's gonna send my heart rate, up in my ears. So just having like that conversation of like, this is what it can feel like. But let's also do some breathing exercises on how you're gonna regulate your heartbeat. And so like those are ways that like you can be like trauma informed. One example, one policy that we have in our gym is that shirts are required. And
Great.
that is one that gets like an eyebrow a lot of like, what? But you know, like
I
the
worked
people
at a
that
gym.
we serve,
That's not, I don't think that has
yeah,
to be
like
like a
the
common.
people that we, yeah, people who we serve, you know, are have disproportionately been affected by like sexual traumas and stuff. And um so that's just one of those things that like if it makes everybody feel safer, if it makes one person feel safer within our walls, let's get all hands on deck for that. But you know, and just you know, if it is like mental health or like substance use disorders that like you're wanting to work with, just you know, taking the time to learn like how do those things like affect people's bodies, but also under duress. That's the point that we want to make. We have a welcome like handbook that has pictures of like what the movements look like. But it also, you know, new people coming in, I think can relate to just like feeling like they're getting like a fire hose of information. But I also, you know, if you have, you know, 20 people in your class and you're also trying to welcome a new member and stuff, you know, like I don't want to put that much pressure on our coaches to remember to like go over all of this stuff so they get something to take with them. And one of those things is information on rhabdo that can affect our population at a disproportionate rate.
Yeah.
Having something that people can take with them is like is a big thing. um, but yeah, I mean, other ways that like you know we try to stay inclusive, whether it's you know like our demographic that like we have a large LGBTQ population or just that like we're in Portland. That is, you know, that's something that has become really important to us. We, you know, got a lot of questions from like non-binary members who, you know, don't see themselves reflected on the whiteboard when
Mhm.
we write out like the prescribed weights. So that is something that we've actually done away with. And
Prescribed weights.
for prescribed weights, yeah. So the like CAP programming has actually been really helpful for us in that, you know, it just helps us understand the stimulus a little bit better. And we do use CAP programming, by the way, but it helps us understand the stimulus a little bit better, so that we know that like we're like with each individual, we're helping them. You know, achieve the right weight for them. And you know, we we have a very beginner like membership base, because part of our membership model is that it's free or low cost for anybody in recovery or seeking recovery. So um, you know, people who otherwise wouldn't have access or, you know, wouldn't be able to pay like $160 a month, you know, like they have access to like high quality coaching and high quality programming, and this like awesome community. Um, so we do have a disproportionate amount of beginners, I think, to other affiliates. So the prescribed weights, like for our community, end up seeming more intimidating
Mhm. Sure.
than anything
And for
anyway. You know, they're
for
like, oh, is that like,
with that as well.
yeah. But it's just kind of like helped us get away from gendering things in
Mhm.
our gym. Um, you know, like if somebody asks us like what kind like barbell to grab, you know, we just be like, oh, grab a 35-pound barbell, grab a
Yeah.
15-pound barbell, whatever it is, you know, like so we've gotten away from like gendering things. Um, I think yeah, like the thing that I think that really um kind of um helps people out when they like walk into the gym and they um get those like the armor to come down a little bit is just like the question of the day. We do a question of the day or like we call it an icebreaker. And then, you know, your first name and your pronouns. And, you know, we'll get the individual every once in a while who doesn't understand like why we're doing the pronouns. And I'm like, all right, Richard, like it's not for you. Just say how you identify. Not to call
And
out all of the
I've got to have
Richards
this
out there, but
conversation. I just have this conversation with another affiliate owner with Jordan Holland. They do pronouns at their gym down in Hillcrest in one of the sub communities in San Diego. And it was new to him when he bought the gym and started. Is that Hillcrest is a definitely a large LGBTQ population, and that was very normal for them every single class to give pronouns, and for him it was not. And so he learned a lot more about what that was, opening it up, even if someone who is giving their pronouns doesn't like someone like you just said isn't like, oh, I don't care. It's not for you. It's for others to
yeah.
feel comfortable in that space. And so something to consider if your initial reaction is kind of like, but that doesn't matter to me. Exactly. It's not for you.
Yeah.
It's maybe for
And there's like
someone
a
else.
way, you know, like to kind of like
Yes.
laugh it off, like, you know, like it's not all about you, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
like,
You don't
you
have
know,
to
just kind
come
of like
out at
roll with it. But
anger or yeah.
yeah. But I don't know, like I think that there's like a lot of like things around that. It like automatically signals to, you know, the people in the room who aren't sure, you know, about like if they're gonna fit in, that like, oh, like we're being, you know, like asked who we are right now.
Yeah.
So like it just like automatically gives them like this little opportunity to be seen. And you know, and it like for coaches like myself who like rely on that like dialogue with people to also get the names. Like you know, like won't always remember people's names, but it's also really important to say people's names while you're coaching them, you know.
Yeah. Hugely
um
important.
yeah. But I think like that is a big way. You know, we don't have gendered bathrooms. Like they're all like single, like they're not like locker rooms. I know some people have had like a challenging time with that. But I mean, if I had to give my like own humble suggestion, I'd just be like, you know, free for all. People go to the bathroom where there's a
I mean,
toilet.
a lot of
Yeah.
gyms, just the way the gym is laid out, there's, you know, maybe say 3 single-use bathrooms. And so there would be no advantage to them to put a gender because then they're going to have a line one way or the other, whichever one they split it, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
and then if you have a shower, you have one shower. You're not going to name that one about this. So like, it's like, or even if you have 2 single-use showers, you're like, I just want to get people in and out. So those are going to be whoever needs it, you know, it's going to be for anyone. So, I think that makes a lot of sense, especially for people that are short on space, which many affiliate owners are in terms of restroom space. Definitely, I've traveled to a lot of affiliates, and at least in my experience, it's rare to get that sort of the experience you see at maybe a more commercial gym facility where it's like gendered and multiple stalls, you know, and it's a locker room and there's all these showers. You don't see that in a lot of affiliates as often. I
Yeah.
think the prescribed weights is interesting to me because having started CrossFit myself back in 2008, there was only one weight on the board. If you're talking about CrossFit.com, there was one weight. And that for me as a female, I found it made perfect sense because I knew after I started doing CrossFit for a while, I knew what that meant for me and my ability, but I also didn't make that the cap. So say there's a workout, Diane, and it's written as 225 on CrossFit.com back in 2008. And so what I would do would be talk with my other closest competitors in the gym, which was several other females, a group of us that were trying to compete, and we would talk about what weight are we going to do. And we all decided because we were trying to be competitive eventually toward the games, but we were competing with ourselves, but competing with each other. And so we would challenge each other, like, you should do a little more. So it wasn't just, it was like, oh, we always do 155 because that's what it means because we're a girl. There were times where we were like, I don't think we should try 225. And I'd be like, yeah, I think we should. And it was like, we knew it was going to be slower. We knew we were going to kind of miss the stimulus a little bit of what Diane is, which is really fast, right? But we were like, we need to push that pace today. We are in whatever, for whatever reason, and we need to push that, sorry, that weight versus the pace. And so we would go off of what are we capable of, and what do we want to challenge today? And instead of we are female, and so we do this, and that is what we do, And so I remember there was a lot of discussion about should there be a male and female weight on CrossFit.com. And there's an interview somewhere on CrossFit.com of me saying, no, I don't think there should be. And I'm like, whatever, I was wrong. Apparently they went the other way, but I was like, I don't think there should be, because you ultimately are going to limit somebody. And I wasn't even trying to be,
Right.
not gendering. I was just like, somebody is going to feel, someone is going to unknowingly be limited there. So I think
For sure.
you should, and what we would do a lot of times is we would say, look, if you can't do the prescribed weight and it's an overhead movement, then you should look to scale it to this percent. I think we would say 70%. If it's a below the waist movement, or maybe we say like below the shoulder, excuse me. So like a clean, a deadlift, we would say 80% of it would be the scaled one tier down. And we don't like, you don't have to call it scaled. Like if you're a woman, you could be like, that's me doing it as I should, perhaps. But we didn't write two weights when I was coming up in it. It was just one. And we also didn't gender the bars because we didn't have 15 kilo bars. There were only 20 kilo bars.
Yeah.
All I ever lifted on was a 20 kilo bar for years. And so
my little hands are so thankful for those
there was
15
like
kilo bars.
and there was 20 kilo bars. And so it was really just like, are we going to do this on big bars or little bars? Like that's literally what it was. So, but a lot has changed. Obviously, equipment manufacturing has gone crazy in a good way, and affiliate owners can have a ton of variety when it comes to, the grip on the bars, which is awesome for anyone that has smaller hands, any person, right? And having that variety of types of equipment to use is great. So how you talk about those, I think I like to just think of it from a standpoint of education. I have a lot of women in my gym and teenage girls. And I think that if they ever leave my gym, especially the teenagers as they get older, go to college, whatever, but even if, some of the women move off, go somewhere else, I want them to have education of what they can lift and what it is. So I'm like, this is a 20 kilogram bar, grab it, feel what it feels like. This is used in competition for men's Olympic lifting. That's, if you watch that on TV, you'll see that. Feel this one, this is a 15 kilo bar, right? So they can tell the length, the grip, the weight, and they can make educated choices when they step into any gym, instead of just like, oh, my coach always said I use a girl bar. It's like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I'm always like, let me educate them into what this piece of equipment is that they're using. So
Yeah, for sure. And I, like try to encourage like our coaches too. And like, especially like we have service agreements with treatment centers. So we will go pick up people that are in treatment. We'll bring them to the gym and they'll work out, and then we'll take them back to treatment. And then once they're discharged from treatment after they've completed their program, they have a like access to the gym after, like they just roll right into like a membership, like once they're discharged. But like with those classes, like specifically, it's like you don't have to stay married to what's like written on the whiteboard, like if you feel like you can achieve, like we're after the stimulus, right? Like, and that's what we try like to tell people, like as they come in, they're like, like I don't know if I can do that. And it's, like that's, like one of the harder things I think to convey to people who are new, no matter like what their background is just we're like, our end goal isn't to get you to look like some games dude with a shirt off flipping tires out in the parking lot. You know what I mean? Like it is to get you better, like whatever your goal is, like if you want to get around with your kids better, like this is how we do it. If you want to look better naked, this is how we do it. Like this is just our training program. It doesn't have to look like what's on the whiteboard. We want it to feel the same. It doesn't have to look the same. So if you feel like you can achieve that stimulus for the people in front of you by changing that workout, the equipment that you're using, whatever, like do that. but also write it down and share it with the rest of us
Yeah.
so that we can steal from you too. Um, but yeah, I mean, like, use all of the equipment, like, use all of the creativity. And I think, like, those of us who like trained through the pandemic, you know, um, got a little better at that, or got a little bit more exposure to that because, depending on, if you were teaching classes over Zoom, or just like sending out programming, renting out equipment, whatever you were doing, we were fortunate enough. We had a member at the time who was sewing sandbags. So we bought some from her and, we're able to give some to people who were working out with us on like Zoom
That's great.
classes. So we got like really good at, just, hey, whatever you have. I have so many like demonstration videos of me working out with like milk jugs and
Yeah,
sandbags and, all the way up to like the barbell equipment.
totally.
But yeah.
That's great. Yeah, I think, like you said, being ready to adjust the workout to hit the stimulus. If you're a coach or an owner and you're not talking stimulus of the workout, you're missing a big part of what that whiteboard brief should be about. And I don't think it would be as hard as you might imagine to replace some of the this is the men's weight, this is the women's weight, with just sort of like, this is where I want you to finish this workout. This is how this round should feel. This is when you would be wanted aiming for unbroken versus this is where you're going to want to break it up. If you are breaking it up sooner, it's too heavy. If you are not unbroken here, you went too heavy. Or, if you're holding on and unbroken, it's too light because I want it to start to sting, like I try to explain that stuff to my athletes. And often what it requires of me is doing the workouts the day before so that I can
Yes. Yeah.
explain. Right. Sometimes, when I'm working with my teens, I know exactly what I want them to feel. And so I don't, maybe I did the CrossFit workout, but different than the workout I'm giving my teens. And I'm like, this one, I want you guys holding on, or this on when you get to the bike, I want you to let it loose versus get on the bike, slow, steady. And then once you pick up the ball, I want to see whatever. That's the descriptions that people need to be hearing because CrossFit is complicated. It's at some level, of course, it's just doing work. But when you get questions at level 1 seminars of like, how do I breathe? It's clear that people's minds are going in a lot of different places when they're doing these movements to need to ask that question, right? So as much guidance as you can, I think that goes hand in hand with what you talked about of being trauma aware, which isn't a term that I'd heard before or thought of. But just what I look at that is like when I'm explaining the workout to my athletes, I'm thinking of every possible twist and turn that might hang them up and cause them to doubt themselves. And so before we get there, let me just let you know, this is where this is the path. And I bring in some humor and I bring in some reality. This is where I felt like I wasn't going to make it, but then I did make it. Look, I'm here standing before you, and
this isn't a hologram.
yeah, exactly. And but to be aware that that might actually be helping someone who has, like you said, experienced physically things, and if you start to feel a similar either raise in heart rate or a weakness or whatever you might describe from your workout, that could be really scary. And so letting them know, and that way during the workout when you are coaching them through it, you can reference that, breathe, just like we talked about. This is the part where you're in it, but it's okay. And then you see if they start to go too far, you slow them down, you stop them. Let's come
for
back.
sure. And that, like, and that just like kind of knowing, like when you need to kind of like intervene is, like there's, you can't replace experience, it takes some experience to like, get there. But yeah, I had another train of thought and I like totally lost it.
I just think what's cool is we want people to fall in love with the process of moving their bodies in any capacity, even if they don't do CrossFit for life. I want them to know what they're capable of and not be afraid of moving their bodies, because this coach pushed me one time and they pushed me because it was CrossFit, and in CrossFit you push, but that can't be the risk of someone not trusting their body, or being too afraid to start again the next day. right? More important than anything else is that they want to come back the next day and the next day and the next day. And that's how I think of it, is like, even if you graduate high school and you go off to college, you're going to come back the next day to someone else, because you know that you feel good doing this kind of stuff. And that's, I want people to think of that with their members, not because they have to keep them here the whole time. Retention is everything, right? Of course, but also like educate them so they know how to feel, how they know how to train themselves, because then you've got someone healthy for life. And I have people that I don't see anymore. I'm in a different part of the state, or they moved away, and they still check in with me and they tell me what they're doing, you know, however many states
Yeah.
over. And they still consider
Yeah, I
me a
love that.
coach. And I'm like, you know, I don't have their income anymore coming in, but I have that connection still, because it was such a
Yeah.
positive experience that they had the confidence to walk into another gym and be like, I can do this. I can try this. So I think that's what we should want to be, right?
Yeah, and I like the physical literacy, that
Yeah.
a lot of people just like don't have. Um, and like, and to no fault of theirs, it's not something that's like prioritized in school. It's not something that, necessarily like the coaches in school even know that that's missing, you know what I mean? So yeah, just, and I think that is probably something that everybody can relate to across affiliates, is like those newer people who are automatically apologetic that they can't do something, or that they're, like they just already feel like they failed before they even started. And it's like it's getting those people to keep coming back. And like that's where like the fitness industry as a whole has like, and like our society has really failed people, is just like, why should you know how to do this stuff? Nobody's showed you,
Yeah.
like that's what we're here for. And like there's a ton of like toxic gym culture stuff on the internet, so I get where like the connotation like comes from, but it just
Sure.
means that like as affiliate owners, as coaches, like we have to be the ones to pick up the slack and to like right that wrong. And
Yeah.
because I mean otherwise, that's the difference between them having like a long life with a high quality of life, or ending up in extended care in the hospital and whatnot. um I know, like it sounds dramatic, but like I know that that's true.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, what are your sort of hopes for the recovery gym and continued growth, right? I know you have your second location now. What are your thoughts? What are your hopes?
um yeah, I mean, I hope that we continue to be able to do this for a really, really long time. You know, we are just on the heels of opening our second location. So, like I'm not even ready to put it out into the universe of, like opening a third. But like, and I'm like by no means like opposed to that. But yeah, I think as a whole, we just, like want to continue doing this. We want to um continue to like sharpen the axe too on like how, like, just because our membership base is like very beginner, doesn't, or like a lot of like beginners, doesn't mean that we shouldn't bring like the highest level of coaching that we we can. So just continuing to stay motivated to do that and to motivate the people that work with us. And I and like the feedback that like we've gotten from like our like the coaches that work with us, is that it that have worked at other affiliates before, is that like they love working for somebody that cares, and that cares about coaching. So um I want to continue to care.
Sounds like you will be able to do that. I think you picked the right career in order to do that.
Yeah.
That's one thing that I feel like most affiliate owners have plenty of, is that heart and that care. So I think these are some really good considerations that you mentioned that we can all kind of keep in the front of our minds, and nothing to be paranoid about, or you're going to make mistakes in terms of if you're trying to make a change in one of these areas. There's going to be mistakes. Just like as coaches, we make mistakes all the time in our programming or in our warm up. Be like, that really did not get them as ready as I hoped it would, or wow, 5 rounds I was way off base. 2 would have been in.
Yeah.
Well, in the same way, you're going to, slip up and say something that you maybe regret. And I think just owning that, if you notice that it maybe hit someone the wrong way, finding a moment to grab them and just own that. And I think that goes a long way with most people. And if it doesn't for them, you know what? Like you did all that you can do in that moment, and then you're going to learn from it and move on the next time. You can't control how someone feels or reacts. That's not your job or responsibility. That's theirs. But you can own something. And I think that's the mark of a place that's recognizing that they're trying to make change and that it is a process. It's not a switch that you can just change, turn on, and then, now we're good again, or we're how we want to be. We're going to get there over time. So hopefully this was helpful for people. And we can always continue the conversation, right? As you kind of come across some more things that you think would benefit others. I'd love to hear from you.
Cool. Yeah, I appreciate that.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks again to Shiloh.